Hi everyone, lcjensen here. Today we are going to whip up some cinnamon rolls, some Swedish pancakes, eggs, and bacon. So yesterday I was going to make pretzels and fried chicken for dinner, but I had the worst migraine. So I had made my pretzel dough, couldn't deal with it, so it overproofed. So we're gonna see how these turned out. But a lot of times when you overproofing, your dough is not bad. There's no one more rise left in it. So I rolled it out last night. I said we'll make cinnamon rolls with it. So 50-50 chance. I think they'll turn out just fine. But this was our pretzel dough that I turned into cinnamon rolls last night, and then I put them in the fridge to cold proof. So we're gonna pop these in the oven at 375 for about 25 minutes. So they were in the fridge overnight to kind of do that cold proofing. And then I took them out about 15-20 minutes ago to just warm them up a little bit. And now they're ready to go into the oven. Fingers crossed that they'll turn out. But we're going to have Swedish pancakes as a backup. So I'm going to set this for 25 minutes at 375. And now we'll start our bacon going because that takes a hot minute to fry up. And then we're going to work on our Swedish pancakes. So I'm hoping that they'll turn out. I always hate to throw stuff away. So we had a big, it's a big bowl of dough. And I was like, I'm pretty sure they can turn into some good cinnamon rolls because you're not so reliant on the big puff when you cook them up. Okay, we're going to put about a pound of bacon in. And then I'm going to break it apart. I like to do the kind of crazy skillet fry on my bacon. So we're going to just break it apart and we'll let it cook up. And then we're going to use the leftover grease to cook up our sausages and some scrambled up eggs.
You have a question. Where can someone find your meatball recipes?
Probably the best place to find them is just to look on the link on our page and then find the video and then just remake them from the video. Because I don't think I have any recipe cards of those put up yet. But we do upload all of our videos onto the link on our page, so you should be able to find it. Okay, let me throw this away. I'm gonna give my hands a quick wash. Get all that bacon. And we're going to start our bacon on, I'm going to start it a little bit higher on about a 7. And then once it starts to sizzle and sweat, I'll turn it down. You don't want to cook your bacon too high or it will start to burn pretty fast. Okay, we are going to make our Swedish pancakes, which they're also called, in Sweden, they're called plata. These are one of my favorite breakfast things growing up that we always had. My mother's from Sweden, so she always made these for us, and she always makes them for our grandchildren, or for like her grandchildren. So we're gonna start out with 6 eggs. And this, if you don't know what a Swedish pancake is, they're nothing like American pancakes. You don't eat them with syrup. You just put them either with jam or sugar on top, and simple. They're a little bit thicker than a crepe. So that's 5 and 6. And then we are going to add in 1 stick of melted butter. So I've got it right here. And we're going to give this a quick little whip up with our little hand mixer here. You're just going to whip it for about 30 seconds or so until they're all kind of mixed up well. And you want to use your butter that has been melted but cooled because you don't want to put scorching hot butter into it or it will cook the eggs. Now we are going to add in 1.5 cups of milk and then 1.5 cups of cream, or you could use 3 cups of half and half. Now, this is a very rich and delicious breakfast, but it is pretty caloric. We don't eat them all the time, but they are delicious. My kids love the batter straight up. So we have 1.5 cups of milk, and then we're going to do 1.5 cups of cream. And this is something that my mom always did slightly different. than the traditional recipe, which just makes it even more delicious. You should see at Thanksgiving time when all of her grandchildren are in, because we all get together at Thanksgiving, she makes these, and she makes about like 100 to 150 of them. She has a special pan for doing it too. She's like the master at it. We slide these out of the way. Before we mix that up, I'm going to give my bacon a quick little turn here because it's starting to sweat out. There we go. And then we're going to give this a quick mix. Mix in our cream, our milk with our egg and our butter. And I like to do the butter with the egg first so that it kind of cools out so it doesn't get too gritty in the milk because the cold milk will have it congeal up. There we go. Okay. Now we're going to add, and this is again was one of my mom's secret ingredients to hers, a teaspoon of vanilla. So most Swedish pancake recipes don't have any vanilla in it, but she always added vanilla to it and it gives it just a little extra. So 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, a half a teaspoon of salt. I did use salted butter, so if you were going to just use unsalted butter, you might want to add a bit more. And then 1/4 cup of granulated sugar. You don't use much sugar in the beginning because what we do between each frying up of the pancake, you sprinkle it with sugar. So just a teeny bit goes into the batter. We're going to give this a good mix, and then we're going to add in our flour. There we go. And then we're going to add in 2 cups of all-purpose flour. But let's give our bacon a little bit of a stir here. And now that it's started to really sweat out, I'm going to turn the heat down to about a 5. That way it can crisp up slowly without it getting burnt, because nothing's worse than burnt bacon.
You have a question? What brand is your hand mixer?
This is a Cuisinart. I actually have gone between both having a KitchenAid and a Cuisinart. I actually think I got this Cuisinart one as a wedding gift, so it's lasted us like 17 years. So we've had it for a while. So it's pretty trusty. Okay, we're adding our 2 cups of all-purpose flour to our mix, and then we're going to whip it up. And this is going to be, it's not a super thick batter because the pancakes are pretty thin. Now, when I say they're thin, they're not nearly as thin as crepes. Those are paper thin. But these are pretty thin for as far as pancakes go. Give it a good whip around. There we go. Perfect. So we're going to have, it's kind of like I say, it's like a bit of a soupy batter, but it will cook up. The eggs in it will give it its puff, and they'll be absolutely delicious. Now I'm going to turn on my griddle here. We're going to warm it up, and I'm going to put a pat of butter. We're going to let it melt around. Want to make sure our griddle's nice and hot before we put our pancakes on it. There we go. Let's give, again, our bacon a little toss. And then while we're waiting for our griddle to warm up, we're going to whip up our frosting for our cinnamon rolls. So I've got some melted butter. I'm going to grab my vanilla. And here they are. Do a little bit of milk and cream in it. We're going to add in a teaspoon of vanilla extract to make our kind of vanilla frosting for our cinnamon rolls. Fingers crossed that they do turn out. And you don't want to, I will say, if you want to even some more mild vanilla, use about a half. Vanilla can sometimes come out really strong, so I wouldn't use more. Then we're going to add in, we have in here about 4 tablespoons of melted butter and a teaspoon of vanilla extract. We're going to add in about a tablespoon of cream and a tablespoon of milk. If you had half and half, you could do both of those. And then get a fork, and we're going to mix up our frosting. We want it to be thicker than a glaze, but I don't like it to be too thick spreading it on, because I don't want it to be, you know, super thick on the cinnamon rolls because they already are pretty sweet to begin with. But we're going to just whip it up with our fork and combine it. And I'll probably take about 2 to 2.5 cups of powdered sugar, but I always start with a little bit and then add it more until I get to my consistency that I want. There we go, because it's easier to add sugar in than to take it out. So right now we've kind of got a soupy glaze, and we're going to go for kind of a thicker frosting. So I'm going to add a bit more powdered sugar, but I like to get it in whipped up. You could also do this with your hand mixer if you wanted to in a bigger bowl, but I find it works just fine with a fork. Helps get out those little clumps in there. I also sometimes love to make cream cheese frosting for our cinnamon rolls, but I typically only make that at Thanksgiving time because I'm the only one in like my immediate family, like out of all my kids and my husband, who likes cream cheese frosting. But at Thanksgiving time, all my siblings do. So when I make a big batch of like 100 cinnamon rolls, then I will make half and half. That way everybody's happy.
You have a question? Can you go over what's in the frosting?
Yes, the frosting is 4 tablespoons of melted butter, a teaspoon of vanilla extract, and then right now we're on about 2.5 cups of powdered sugar. And we're getting to almost the perfect consistency. We've got a thick one. I just want a little bit more. I want it to be able to drizzle, but like a slow drizzle, like molasses kind of. So we're at, I would say, 3 cups of powdered sugar right now, and that should do it. Because you want to be able to kind of drizzle it on instead of completely spreading it, because spreading it doesn't go on as nicely. There we go. Okay, this looks like we've got a good consistency here. So it's got a little bit of a drizzle to it, but it's not running away with you. Okay, let's get our butter smoothed around on our skillet here. And there is a lot of butter in our thing, so you don't need too much, but I'm getting it enough to kind of give it a nice little coating. And now I'm going to turn my pan down to about a 3. So I had it heating up to where it was nice and hot on an 8. And now we're going to turn it down because you don't want to burn it. And then we're going to start, this is a 1/3 cup measuring, and I'm going to add it. And I just do one at a time because they run out and they get pretty big. And the bigger they are, the harder it is to flip.
You have a question? Where can someone find the recipe for cinnamon rolls?
These cinnamon rolls are not my usual cinnamon rolls. So last night I was going to make my pretzels and I had a migraine, it turned out. But I do have a recipe for my OG cinnamon rolls, which are the best, which is on the link on our page. And I think we have a recipe card and a whole video tutorial on how to make them on there. But again, these are not my traditional ones. I was going to make fried chicken and pretzels last night for dinner, but I had like the worst migraine. I've got my plate right here. And I couldn't function. I was like, pizza it is, everybody. We're ordering pizza. And You know, when I get these migraines like once a month, and when it hits me, it wipes me out, and I'm like, nobody's getting anything out of me. Good thing we live near a big city and we have Uber Eats. Okay, now the trick with this, you need a really thin spatula to slide under, and then you flip it. They cook really fast because they're like paper thin type thing, but delicious. But you want to do it low. So now I have my heat on my skittle is on a 3. So that's, between low and medium, because you just warm up your griddle first and then you cook it up. If you try to do it too high, you're just going to burn your pancake, and that will be no bueno. Here we go.
You got a question? Are you making pancakes or crepes?
Swedish pancakes. So they are neither crepes nor pancakes. So they are thicker than a crepe, and they don't have that kind of crunchy feeling that a crepe has. They're very soft and silky. And they're full of butter, eggs, cream, and a little bit of sugar. So we're going to put my next one out.
You have a request to go over the recipe? You get a moment?
Yes. Let me do that 1 second. Between each layer of Swedish pancake, which are also called platta in Swedish, you sprinkle a little bit of sugar. This is what my kids love to help me do, is they sprinkle the sugar on, but they don't get a little. It's like a lot of sugar between each one. But it is a super simple recipe. So we started out with 6 eggs, and then we added a stick of melted butter, whip those up, then 1.5 cups of milk, 1.5 cups of cream, whip all of that up, a teaspoon of vanilla. Then we added a half a teaspoon of salt, 1/4 cup of sugar, whip all of that up, and then 2 cups of all-purpose flour. And voila, you have your delicious Swedish pancake batter, which in Sweden, they'll serve this with lingonberry jam, which is a really tart jam, and then they'll can roll it up. And so it looks like a little spin, and then they cut it so it looks kind of like a pinwheel. And a lot of times they serve this with dinner. So traditionally, you would have Swedish pancakes or platta with split pea soup, and then lingonberry things. But my mom always just cooked it for us for breakfast. And they're delicious. She, I will say, is the master at it. She makes them like the size of the pan. And she has this special little tool that they're like little sticks, and I'm like, I can do little ones with my little spatula. If I try to go any bigger, then they're like, they go everywhere. So I always stick in my comfort zone. And that's what I always tell everybody with pancakes. Start smaller. Smaller pancakes are much easier to flip, and you're less likely to get disheartened or go wrong when you can easily stick your spatula under it. And you need to have a really thin spatula. Thick ones don't slide under there as nicely. Here we go. And then we'll put our next one in, and you just barely cook them because they're very thin. So they already cook through. It's not like with pancakes where you need like a minute or 2 minutes on each side. These are really thin. So you barely cook them through because they're almost primarily cooked through on the first side, and then you just toast up because you want them to be tender and soft. You don't want to have a crisp edge on it. Crepes typically, they're really thin and they have a little bit of a crunch to it. Swedish pancakes do not have that at all, but they are delicious. And you do not eat them with maple syrup or anything like that. You eat them just with sugar. Some people do powdered sugar over regular sugar. Eat your own. We always had them with granulated sugar, and the sugar kind of melts into the pancake to make them lovely and sweet. And again, don't eat them with maple syrup. I always think about my sister's husband's family, and my mom had made them for them. They were visiting with us, and so they were my brother-in-law's brothers, and they were there, and they pulled out a big thing of syrup, and they were trying to eat them with syrup, and it was just, I guess it could work. It would just taste weird, I think. But they have a kind of a mildly sweet vanilla flavor with it. That's because we put a pinch of that vanilla in there. But they're just lovely, but nothing like American ones. Okay, we've got our bacon is almost crisp up to a lovely. And I love to do the crazy fry on my bacon because I think it crisps up nicely. And I always do it in a smaller pan versus a bigger pan because the smaller pan keeps all of that grease and covers it so it crisps up nicely versus if you put it in too big of a pan, the grease spreads out and it's more likely to burn versus like fry up in that grease. Okay, got our pancake number 2 coming up.
That's 3.
3, that's right. I'm really terrible at counting here. It's funny. You would think somebody with their doctorate could count. Apparently, that skill eludes me. There we go. Nice little shake over. And it's funny, we'll like shake them over and then, you stack each pancake on top, which so the residual heat melts the sugar. And my kids are always like, you forgot to sugar it. And I was like, it's on there. And they're like, no, I need more. And they're always wanting another one. What I love to do with them is I take strawberry jam and I spread it, thin layer strawberry jam, and I roll it up. It's so good. It reminds me of, I guess, what blintzes are. Which are kind of like the Polish pancakes that you roll up with a jam. These are essentially just like that when you roll them up.
You have a question? What's your doctorate in?
Educational leadership and policy. So I went to school and got lots of degrees. My undergrad, I have 2 undergrad degrees from Iowa State, early childhood and then special education. And then I have a master's in early childhood special education. So I combine them there. From Vanderbilt, and then I got my doctorate in educational leadership and policy from Vanderbilt with an emphasis in K-12 education. Here we go. We're going to put our bacon right over here. Whoop. Let them spread out. And let me flip my pancake over here. There we go. And then I'm going to pop in my 2 sausages real quick, or my 4 sausages real quick, because some of my kiddos don't like bacon, and fry them up in the grease. Make sure you turn your temperature down really low. That way you don't crisp up. I put them in from freezing, so they cook up slowly versus fast. And that way they'll get a nice little kind of crisp outside with a rich bacony flavor.
Question: do you make crepes and have a recipe for them?
I have made crepes before. They're a lot of work doing that, so I haven't done it in a long time, so I don't have a good recipe for it. But these are very similar to crepes, so I actually think they taste better than crepes. And you can make a big one and eat them almost the same way. Like I remember when I was in high school, I did a foreign exchange to Germany. And when I was living there, my school went to Paris for a week and we, explored everything. And I remember eating the best crepes right outside of Notre Dame. There, it was Nutella and shredded sweetened coconut. And they like cooked it up and they spread it on there and put it in there. It was so good. Clearly it was so good. I'm talking about it 20 years later. But things like that stick in your mind. And I have done it with the Swedish pancakes and they are just as good. You just make it a little bit bigger. And if you can alter it, instead of doing straight up cream, if you just did milk, it will make the pancake a little bit thinner, which gives you kind of that crepe-esque feeling. Without the whole extra work, because with real crepes, you can get a crepe maker, which makes it easier. And I did that before. I had my friend had a crepe maker, and we did it where it spreads it out and then it flips it forward, because it is such a papery thin dough for it, like batter on there, and it cooks up. It is hard if you don't have like the special tools for it. Here we go. got those, and then we're going to cook our eggs in there. But what I'll do is I'm going to reserve some of, or take away some of that bacon grease, because it's too much bacon grease to cook your eggs in. So I dump a little bit of it out. That way it doesn't get too greasy. And yummy. Okay, let's get that spilling right there and see. We've got about a minute left on our cinnamon rolls. So this is going to be the moment of truth, whether they turned out last night. So the dough that I make for my pretzels, and we'll go get them out of the thing, is about similar to my cinnamon roll dough. It's just a variation. The pretzel uses water. The cinnamon roll dough uses milk. So I was like, you know what? I think we can do it. Oh, they did pop up. I accidentally, I wasn't feeling good. So they proofed for like 6 hours instead of the like 1.5 for it. But they look like they turned out great. Just again, I know a lot of people think, oh, if you overproof your bread, it's ruined. Well, most people don't realize is that bread has, like that dough has a third proof time in it, as long as you squeeze out all of that excess gas in it. So I thought it'd be great popping them in the rolling them out into cinnamon rolls, which would squeeze out that gas in it. And they literally, look, they popped up lovely. I put them in the fridge last night to kind of do a cold proofing on them to help build up that structure, but they look like they cooked up wonderful. So that is a bonus. And we'll top them with our frosting in just a second. We want them to cool off just a bit. So we've got here. But, it wasn't completely ruined. I came out at midnight, finally feeling better. I had started making the pretzel dough at like 6:30 thinking, oh, we'll do dinner. But then my migraine was just too awful. And I was like, oh, I'll just throw it away. And then I was like, nope, we can save it. And a lot of times is don't ever, if you've forgotten about a dough and it's proofed too long, don't bake it up right away. You've got to, repress it down, squeeze out those gases in it that causes it to rise. Because if you bake it, it will instantly deflate, because the acetate that comes from the proofing of the breaking out of the yeast and stuff like that ruins your gluten structure. But if you press all that gas out and then reshape it and then give it another rise, then it should work out just fine. Okay, let's get these guys are nice and cooked up. So we're going to transfer them out.
You have a question? Did you make cream cheese frosting?
I did not make cream cheese frosting. This is just a not a true buttercream frosting, but it is like a classic frosting with some melted butter and cream in it. So not quite a glaze, not quite a buttercream, but a happy medium. Okay, we're going to take out some of this grease. Let me get a bowl to pour it in. Word to the wise, never pour your grease down the drain, or you will have a really big plumbing bill. So we're going to pull out some. And then what I like to do before I fry up my eggs, I'm going to put my grease right there. And then I'm just going to take a paper towel and take out some of these burnt bits, because I want the flavor of the grease, but not so much the burnt bits in it, because they kind of give you a burnt flavor in your eggs. So we're just going to scrape them out just a little bit. So you still have a little bit, but you're not overkilling them with that. And then let's give our little flip. Yep, I forgot to sugar this one. Sugar it up. And then where did my butter go? Everything, there it is. It hides from me. It's like when you're wrapping presents and you put your scissors down for a second and then you can never find them. So I like to use a little bit of butter also in my bacon grease for my eggs. I think together they have that like perfect little flavor. And then we're going to turn it up. And we're just going to do a nice little scramble on it. So I'm going to move that butter around. And you can see the butter kind of like sizzles in that bacon grease, which is just those milk solids cooking up. And then let me grab my big tray of eggs over here. because I'm just going to scramble in the pan versus wasting another bowl. Okay, my kids have very strong opinions about how their eggs are supposed to be cooked. Teddy, if I try to give him any egg that is not scrambled, he will eat a hard-boiled egg. But if I try to give him a fried egg, that boy is like, what? And then I remember one time I gave it to him. He picked the egg back up, put it back on the skillet, and he was like, you need to scramble it. So I chopped it up and pretended that it was scrambled. But he really only likes scrambled eggs. And then some of them, they'll eat the fried egg, but they only eat the white. So I'm always like, well, I'm not going to fry up eggs if you guys aren't going to eat it all. So now we'll pop all these yolks and we're just going to do a quick scramble in here. There we go. And we'll get our next one out. And again, we're making quite a lot because we are feeding a small army here. We're feeding 9 today for breakfast. So got to make a lot of food when you have a lot of mouths to feed. More like a brunch, not a breakfast, because they all had little snacks earlier. On the weekends, I try to do a nice big brunch for everyone.
You have a question. It seems so peaceful. Where are the kids right now?
The kids are right now playing outside with their grandparents. It is like a nice, beautiful day. We had lots of storms yesterday. So they are playing outside. Oh, my oldest two, my 15-year-old and my 13-year-old are still sleeping. So they will get to wake up to the smells of a delicious breakfast. But my younger ones are playing outside. So it's nice to have grandparents who live nearby. Yeah, that is, I guess, it is a nice, because I will say it takes a village to raise kids, especially when they're in sports and they have activities and they are getting pulled in so many different directions. You know, like right now where we live right outside of Nashville, so we're outside big city, and my kids they're in like, sports leagues and stuff like that year round, but they could have practices in literally 3 different towns 30 minutes apart from each other, where I'm like, I gotta go here, then I gotta go there, and then over here. And that can get crazy trying to get everybody to practice when they all end up at the same time, but at way different locations. It gets a little crazy. Here we go. Get those scrambling up. Let's check out our pancake here. There we go. And while that's doing a quick thing, let's frost up our cinnamon rolls here. So we're going to just drizzle it all over, and then we'll kind of give it a little spread. You want to wait until they've cooled down a little bit since coming out of the oven, because you don't want them to be right out of the oven, or it will completely melt. But there we go. Give you that nice, delicious. That's why we wanted this nice kind of thickness, because it will melt up, but it will still have a little bit of thickness to it on the cinnamon roll, which will be delicious. And this is, again, it's like our hybrid kind of glazed buttercream with frosting. And a little bit right there. There we go. And then my little ones will also just love to eat the frosting straight. It's like whenever I make homemade donuts and I put them on a little rack to drizzle them after I dip them. And they're all like, ooh, donuts. But what they don't come and eat a donut right away. They take their fingers underneath and they lick the frosting. There we go. Get another guy out. We'll sprinkle this one with a little bit of sugar. Perfect. And then our eggs will fry up and we will be able to serve up some of our breakfast today.
You have a question? Do you have any videos of making homemade donuts?
I do have several videos of making homemade donuts and lots of different recipes. They're located on the link on our page. I do try to upload all of our live streams. So you can always make them there. And I have, I think, a couple of recipe cards out there for making some homemade donuts. Now, these are all cake donuts, like old-fashioned donuts, because I do have a donut maker, and so I typically make them in there versus like the yeast donuts, which I have not made in a long time. Yeast donuts are delicious, but you got to fry them in a lot of oil. Maybe we'll do them over camping this summer, because that's always when we made yeast donuts growing up, was when we were camping. We would do them on our campfire in a big kettle. So we'd have them rise all day, then you'd throw them in there. We'll sprinkle a little bit of salt. And it looks like we can serve up and show you how we're going to be eating our breakfast today. Let's give this guy a quick flip. Okay. So we'll have, let's get some sausage. Bacon, bacon, bacon. Can't go wrong with bacon. You got your eggies. And then, of course, let's pull up our cinnamon roll. And I'm going to roll up our Swedish pancake, how we typically eat it. So we have 1 and 2. And this is our delicious breakfast today. We've got bacon, sausage, scrambled eggs, homemade cinnamon rolls saved from our pretzel dough last night, and delicious Swedish pancakes. A pretty quick, easy, but delicious brunch for my family. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, show you what we're making for our family, hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page, so you can always go there and cook along with on those recipes and whatnot. And we do offer membership if you want some access to some extra recipe cards, exclusive content, more about our family and whatnot. But again, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and